She wasn't picked at the chosen ceremony, but her tears broke a curse. Tears of the Unchosen. The moon was too bright that night. It hung above the clearing like an unblinking eye, silver light spilling over the gathered crowd of wolves and humans alike. Elara clutched the hem of her ceremonial dress, fingers twisting in the fabric, heart hammering in her throat. This was the night she had dreamed of since childhood, the chosen ceremony. Every year, unmated wolves came together under the full moon to find the bond fated to them by the gods. Every year, a few walked away marked, their futures entwined. But not everyone was chosen. She kept her chin high as the Alpha read out the names. Couples stepped forward, touched by the glow of destiny, their eyes alight as invisible threads tugged them together. Murmurs of awe spread through the crowd, cheers rising when bonds clicked into place. Elara's lips trembled, but she forced a smile, whispering encouragement to her friend Mara when she was called and paired with a tall warrior from a neighboring pack. Name after name. Not hers. The silence around her grew heavier, pressing in on her ribs. She could feel the pitying glances. She could hear the whispers. By the time the last names were spoken, her body felt like stone. The Alpha's voice rang final in the night air. It is done. May the chosen bond strengthen our pack. Elara couldn't breathe. Her chest seized, tears burning behind her eyes. She tried to swallow them down, to keep her dignity, but when she looked up at the moon, cold, watching, judging, something inside her broke. The first sob tore free before she could stop it. Her knees buckled, and her tears spilled hot onto the earth. And then the earth answered. The ground shivered beneath her palms. A strange heat licked through the air, swirling like invisible fire. Gasps erupted from the gathered wolves as the ancient stone in the center of the clearing, the moon altar, lit up with silver veins of light. The howl of power, low and resonant, rolled through the night like thunder. Elara, someone whispered. Her tears soaked into the soil, glowing as they sank deep, and a crack split the altar stone in two. From it, a shadow surged upward, an old presence, older than the pack, older than the bonds themselves. The moon itself seemed to flare brighter, illuminating the girl who hadn't been chosen. And then the whispers turned to terror. You broke it, she broke the curse. The old curse. The one the pack elders only ever spoke of in hushed tones, the reason bonds sometimes faltered, why wolves sometimes lived half-lives without their mates. It had been said that only an act of pure sorrow, tears shed from rejection beneath the full moon, could unravel it. For centuries, no one had dared to hope. Elara's vision blurred, not just from tears but from the strange glow wrapping around her. A phantom wind whipped through her hair, tugging at her dress, and in the center of it stood a figure, half man, half wolf, eyes burning with golden fire. He stepped from the heart of the altar's light, gaze fixed only on her. You, he said, voice carrying the weight of centuries. Your sorrow freed me. The clearing erupted in chaos, wolves shifting in panic, elders shouting, the Alpha barking orders. But Elara barely heard them. Her heart was no longer breaking. It was thundering to life, caught in the gravity of the man before her. He was not just a wolf. He was something more. Something cursed. Something hers. The figure's presence seemed to steal the air itself. Elara's skin prickled as though every nerve had been set alight, but she couldn't look away. His face was sharp, sculpted like it had been carved from old stone, and yet his eyes held the raw fire of a wild thing long imprisoned. His shoulders were broad, his bare skin streaked with glowing marks like cracks in reality itself. Who are you? Elara whispered, her voice trembling. The man stepped closer, and each movement rippled with barely leashed power. I am Kieran, he said, the name rolling off his tongue like an invocation. Bound to the curse that has chained your kind for generations. Until now. Her breath hitched. Bound? She remembered the stories, fragments of ancient warnings muttered by the elders. A wolf once so powerful he had been cursed by the gods, sealed away when his rage threatened to tear the world apart. A wolf who was never meant to walk under the moon again. And now he was here. Standing in front of her. Because of her. The alpha shoved through the crowd, his form towering in half-shift, teeth bared. Get away from her, he snarled, but the words trembled with fear. Even alphas knew when they faced something greater. Kieran's golden gaze flicked lazily to the alpha. Your authority means nothing to me. He tilted his head, a feral grin tugging at his mouth. But this girl's tears called me forth. That makes her mine. Elara's stomach lurched. Yours? Yes. His voice softened, turning intimate, like he was speaking only to her though the entire pack was listening. You touched the curse. You carry its breaking in your blood now. You are bound to me as surely as the moon is bound to the night sky. The pack erupted with shouts, panic lacing their cries. Wolves shifted fully, teeth flashing, but none dared approach. The power radiating from Kieran was suffocating, pressing everyone to the edges of the clearing. Everyone but Elara. Because as much as her mind screamed danger, her body reacted differently. Her pulse quickened, not just with fear but with something frighteningly like longing. When his gaze pinned her, she felt seen, not pitted, not overlooked, not unchosen, but essential. Elara, the alpha barked, voice sharp, commanding. Step away from him. Her legs wavered, torn between the safety of her pack and the pull of the cursed wolf who claimed her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure which side was truly safe. Kieran extended his hand, palm open. The glow of the altar still wrapped around him, threads of light weaving from his chest toward her like strands of destiny itself. Come, he said, voice low, magnetic. Choose. Elara's tears had broken the curse, but her choice might break everything else. Elara's breath caught in her throat as the clearing held its silence, the moment balanced on the knife's edge of her decision. Her hands trembled, every instinct urging her to cling to the familiar safety of her pack, to obey her alpha's barked command. Yet when her gaze slid back to Kieran's outstretched hand, the world narrowed to the molten glow of his eyes. She had spent her life unseen, the girl no one chose, the girl who faded to the edges of every gathering. But this ancient being of fury and fire, looked at her as though she were the only soul that mattered. Her feet moved before she realized what she was doing. One step. Then another. The alpha growled, a guttural warning that rattled her bones, but Elara's body betrayed her loyalty, carrying her closer to the cursed wolf. Kieran's lips curved into something between triumph and relief as her trembling fingers slid into his palm. Heat surged instantly through her, flooding her veins with a fire that wasn't pain but transformation. She gasped, knees nearly buckling, as images flashed in her mind, memories that weren't hers. A great war. Wolves tearing the land apart. Kieran's howl echoing as the gods themselves descended. Chains of moonlight binding him in stone. Centuries of silence, rage gnawing at the edges of his mind, until tonight. Until her. She ripped her hand back with a cry, clutching her chest as the visions seared away. The pack stood frozen, horror written on every face. Mara, her friend, whispered her name, eyes wide with betrayal. Elara, the alpha snapped, voice laced with both fear and fury. Do you understand what you've done? Her lips parted, but she had no answer. All she could feel was the lingering burn of Kieran's touch. What she has done, Kieran interrupted, his voice a thunderclap rolling over the clearing, is awaken me. And whether you cower or bare your fangs, the old ways are broken. The curse is ended. He looked down at Elara, softer now. And she will walk with me. No, the alpha snarled. In a blur of motion, he lunged, shifting fully into his monstrous wolf form mid-leap. Teeth gleamed in the moonlight, claws slashing toward Kieran's throat. But the cursed wolf didn't move. With one sweep of his arm, a wave of invisible force hurled the alpha backward, sending him crashing into the altar's shattered stone. Dust and silver light exploded in the air. The pack erupted into chaos, wolves half-shifted, some backing away in terror, others growling in rage. Elara stumbled, caught between the two worlds colliding before her. Kieran leaned down, his voice low but urgent. You must decide, little flame. Will you run with them? Or will you run with me? Her heart thundered so loudly she thought it might burst. For the first time, Elara realized the truth. She wasn't just unchosen anymore. She had been chosen by something far more dangerous. And she wasn't sure if that was salvation or damnation. Elara's lungs burned as though the air itself had become too heavy to breathe. Every eye in the clearing was on her, their once packmate, now standing at the center of a storm no one had foreseen. Her alpha groaned where he'd landed against the altar stones, his fur bristling, eyes wild with rage. Her friend Mara clutched her mate's hand, her expression torn between fear and disbelief. Elara, the alpha roared, his voice fractured from both pain and fury. Step away from that monster. Now. Monster. The word cracked like a whip, slicing through the haze of heat in her veins. Elara's body quivered, torn in half. This was her family. The only life she had ever known. Wolves she had trained with, laughed with, hunted beside. Wolves who had pitted her, yes, but still accepted her as one of their own. Yet Kieran's golden gaze burned into her, and she felt that pull again, the strange, fierce certainty that he saw her as something more. His voice rumbled low, meant for her ears alone though it carried easily on the night air. Do you hear them? They do not see you. They never did. You were nothing until your sorrow set me free. With me, you are everything. Her throat tightened, tears threatening again. If I go with you, I betray them, she whispered. If you stay with them, Kieran countered, his hand brushing the edge of her sleeve, a jolt sparking at the touch, you betray yourself. The pack surged forward, wolves snarling, hackles raised. Elara flinched, her body instinctively shifting halfway, claws pressing against her palms, fangs pricking against her lip. She hadn't even meant to. The bond with Kieran was already changing her, quickening her instincts, sharpening her senses. Protect her. Mara's voice cut through, shaking with conflict. Her friend's wolf form bristled as she darted in front of Elara, barring the path of their own packmates. The gesture froze the others for a breath, shock rippling through them. Mara, Elara whispered, stunned. You are my friend, Mara said, eyes shining, but what you've unleashed. I don't know if even you can control it. The alpha staggered to his feet, blood dripping from a gash across his muzzle. His voice broke into a howl of command. Seize her. Before it is too late. Wolves leapt. Shadows of fur and teeth. Elara gasped as Kieran pulled her into his arms, spinning them both away just as a wall of searing light erupted from his chest, blasting the nearest attacker's back. The forest itself seemed to bend away from him, trees groaning as branches snapped and earth split. His breath brushed her ear, hot and unrelenting. This is your moment, Elara. Choose them, and you will remain their broken girl. Choose me, and you will never be unchosen again. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of fear and desire tangled into one. And with every pulse, she realized the truth. This choice would decide not only her fate, but the fate of the entire pack. Elara drew a shuddering breath. The next words would seal everything. Elara's lips parted, her voice trembling but clear enough to carry across the clearing. I choose, her words caught in her throat as every gaze bore into her, every bond and memory weighing her down. For a heartbeat, she saw herself as a child running with the other pups, as a young woman hoping desperately for a mate who never came, as the girl left standing alone when the names were called. Always less. Always forgotten. Her fists clenched, claws digging into her palms until blood welled. She lifted her chin, forcing the words out, steady this time. I choose myself. The silence that followed was deafening. Not Kieran. Not the pack. Herself. And yet, the effect was seismic. The air shimmered, the altar pulsed, and the moon itself seemed to flare brighter as though in approval. Kieran's eyes widened, a flicker of something almost reverent crossing his face. Clever flame, he murmured. Even unbound, you command power. The alpha bared his teeth, spittle flying as he roared, lies. She is tainted by the curse. She is no longer one of us. Mara flinched but did not move from Elara's side. Several wolves hesitated, torn between loyalty to their alpha and the awe trembling in their bones at what they had just witnessed. Elara stood straighter, her chest heaving. All my life I begged for the moon to choose me. Tonight, it did. Not in the way I dreamed, but in the way I needed. If you cannot accept that, then maybe I was never yours to begin with. Kieran's low laugh curled through the chaos, dangerous but admiring. Spoken like a queen. The word struck her like a spark, igniting something deep in her chest. Her blood still hummed with the strange fire from his touch, her instincts sharper than ever before. She wasn't just Elara the overlooked anymore. Something had awakened. The alpha lunged again, reckless with fury. This time, Elara reacted first. Her body moved without thought, shifting fully into her wolf form mid-leap, fur bursting across her skin, bones cracking and reshaping. She collided with him in midair, their snarls mingling in a storm of teeth and rage. Gasps erupted from the crowd. For the first time in her life, Elara stood as more than a background figure. She was a force. She was a storm. Pinned beneath her, the alpha's eyes widened, not with fear, but with recognition. The curse, it lives in you now. Elara's fangs hovered over his throat, her pulse racing. One bite, and she could end him. Claim everything. Kieran's voice cut through the madness, resonant and steady. Decide, flame. Will you kill your alpha, or will you lead them? The choice trembled in her bones, heavier than the first. Not just survival now. Destiny. Elara's jaws hovered inches from the alpha's throat, her breath hot against his fur. The crowd of wolves circled, their howls hushed into a tense silence. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum in her skull, louder than the alpha's ragged breaths, louder than even Kieran's steady voice urging her forward. One snap of her teeth, and it would be done. The alpha's tyranny ended. The pack leader who had never once seen her as more than a fragile shadow would fall beneath her fangs. She could rise, powerful and feared. But that wasn't who she was. With a guttural snarl, Elara pulled back. She stepped off the alpha's chest, her fur bristling, her muscles trembling from the sheer will it took not to finish him. Her golden eyes, newly kindled with the fire of the broken curse, glared down at him. I will not kill you, she growled, her voice carrying strangely human clarity even through her wolf form. Not because you deserve mercy. But because I am not your monster. Gasps rippled through the pack. The alpha lay stunned, blood dripping from his muzzle, shame burning in his eyes. Kieran's gaze sharpened, the faintest curl of a smile playing on his lips. Restraint, he murmured, almost to himself. That is why the curse broke for you. Elara shifted back, her body aching from the sudden transformation, her dress torn and clinging to her sweat-soaked skin. She stood tall despite her trembling legs. Hear me, she called out, voice raw but strong. The moon saw me tonight. My tears, my pain, my strength, it chose me. Not as one of the forgotten. Not as prey. As its vessel. You can fear me, you can reject me, or you can follow me. But I will not be silent again. The pack wavered, uncertainty rippling through the ranks. Some wolves bowed their heads instinctively, as though her words carried the weight of an alpha's command. Others shifted nervously, caught between old loyalties and new awe. Mara's voice broke the tension, steady and clear. I stand with Elara. She stepped forward, her mate at her side. One by one, wolves lowered their eyes, not to the wounded alpha, but to her. Kieran's laughter rang low and dangerous, pride and hunger intertwined. Look at them, flame. Even bound by fear, they bend. You are no longer unchosen. You are the beginning of something new. The alpha forced himself upright, staggering but defiant. His gaze burned into Elara's. If you take this path, you doom us all. That curse runs in your blood now. It will consume you, and every wolf foolish enough to follow. Elara's hand went to her chest, where her heartbeat thundered like a drum of war. She felt the fire, the strange, living heat inside her veins. It was power and danger. Both truths lived in it. Both truths lived in her. She looked from her pack to Kieran, then back again. Her voice trembled only slightly as she spoke. Then let the doom be mine to carry. I will decide what this curse becomes. The moon flared above them, as though sealing her vow. The clearing dispersed slowly, like mist after a storm. Wolves slunk into the shadows of the forest, their bodies still tense, their eyes darting between Elara and Kieran as if neither could be trusted. Yet none dared to challenge her again, not after what they'd seen. Mara stayed close, her gaze steady and protective, though worry pinched the edges of her mouth. The Alpha limped away with his most loyal followers, rage radiating from every step, but he did not look back. His silence was more dangerous than his growls had been. Elara stood in the center of it all, her chest heaving, her blood still burning with the curse. Her torn dress clung to her skin, the night wind chilling her sweat-damp body, but inside she was fever-hot. She felt raw, exposed, and terrifyingly alive. Kieran hadn't moved far from her side. He lingered like a shadow, golden eyes glowing, every breath of his chest deliberate. When the last wolf had vanished into the trees, he turned to her. "You showed them restraint," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in her bones. "And that is why they fear you more than they ever feared me." Elara's throat tightened. "You talk as though this is a gift." She pressed her palm against her chest, where the fire pulsed, alive and restless. "But I feel it inside me. It's burning me from the inside out. If this curse lived in you for centuries, then you know, it isn't just power. It's a hunger." His gaze softened, and for the first time she saw something flicker beneath the feral bravado. Weariness. Loneliness. Yes. It is hunger. Rage. Fire without end. It devours. "But with you," he trailed off, studying her with an intensity that stole her breath. "With you, it feels different." As though the flame finally found air instead of stone. She shivered, not from the wind but from the weight of his words. Part of her wanted to recoil, to shove him away and deny whatever tether had formed between them. Another part, a wilder, more reckless part, wanted to lean in, to test the pull of his fire against her own. Mara cleared her throat softly, breaking the moment. "Elara, what now? The Alpha won't forgive this. He'll rally the others. He'll make you his enemy." Elara looked at her friend, her heart aching. "I never wanted to be anyone's enemy." "You never wanted to be anyone's prey either," Mara reminded her gently. The truth of that struck deep. Elara clenched her fists, feeling the claws threatening beneath her skin. She wasn't prey anymore. But neither was she sure what she was becoming. Kieran stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "The curse inside you is no simple burden. It ties us. You freed me, Elara. That makes us bound, whether you call it fate, curse, or something else." His hand brushed hers, just enough for sparks to leap between their skin. "We will have to learn to master it together, or it will consume us both." Her pulse stuttered. Bound to him. The thought was both terrifying and intoxicating. She lifted her chin, swallowing the fear threatening to choke her. "Then we learn. But on my terms. Not the gods. Not the Pack's. Not even yours." Kieran's grin was sharp, wolfish. "Good. I wouldn't have it any other way." The moonlight pooled around them, and Elara realized the middle of her story was no safer than the beginning. It was only more dangerous. More uncertain. And maybe, just maybe, more hers. The days that followed were a blur of whispers, wary glances, and shifting allegiances. Elara could feel it in the air whenever she walked through the village, the crackle of fear, the sharp tang of distrust, the weight of eyes that had once dismissed her now burning holes in her back. She had been overlooked her entire life. Now, she was impossible to ignore. Mara never left her side. Her presence was a balm against the tension, but even Mara's loyalty couldn't erase the unease that rippled through the pack. Wolves who once called Elara friend now avoided her gaze. Mothers pulled their pups close when she passed. The alpha had retreated to the council hall, no doubt planning his next move, his silence a blade poised above them all. And through it all, Kieran lingered. He didn't stalk the edges like a specter, he strode openly through the heart of the village, his bare chest marked with glowing runes, his presence a provocation. Wolves bristled and growled when he passed, but none dared challenge him. His aura was too heavy, his fire too near the surface. He belonged nowhere, and yet he walked as though the earth itself bent to him. Elara hated how her pulse quickened when she saw him. One evening, she found herself standing by the river's edge, the moonlight trembling across the current. She dipped her hands into the icy water, hoping to cool the fever that still lingered in her veins. But when she looked down, her reflection startled her, the faint glow of gold still burned in her eyes, alien and haunting. "You see it, don't you?" Kieran's voice rolled from behind her, steady and deep. She didn't turn. "I see something I don't recognize." "Not something," he corrected, stepping into the moonlight beside her. "Someone." His nearness made the air hum. Elara drew a shaky breath. "This fire inside me, it's changing me. I can feel it. And I don't know if it's making me stronger, or if it's hollowing me out." Kieran crouched beside the river, trailing his fingers through the water. Steam curled where his skin touched it, vanishing into the night air. "It will do both. Power always does. But it is not meant to hollow you. It is meant to burn away what holds you back." He lifted his eyes to hers. "Do you fear that?" Her laugh was bitter. "I've lived my whole life unseen. Now I'm terrified that the only way to be seen is to become something monstrous." For the first time, his expression softened, stripped of its sharp edges. "You mistake fire for monstrosity. Fire destroys, yes, but it also creates. It clears, so new life may grow. You are not cursed, Elara. You are reborn." The words sank into her like embers, dangerous and tempting. She wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into the fire instead of fighting it. But the pack's fear, her alpha's rage, her own trembling uncertainty, none of that could be erased by poetic words. "You make it sound easy," she whispered. Kieran smiled faintly, golden eyes catching the moonlight. "It is not easy. It is everything." The pull between them was undeniable, an invisible thread woven tighter with every shared glance, every word that sparked something alive inside her. And when the silence stretched too long, Elara realized her hand had inched closer to his, the heat of him bleeding into her skin. Before she could decide whether to pull away, Mara's voice cut through the night from the tree line, sharp with urgency. "Elara. The Alpha has called the council. They're demanding your presence." The moment shattered, leaving Elara's chest aching with both relief and regret. She rose to her feet, wiping her damp palms on her torn dress. "Then let them hear me," she said, though her heart trembled. Kieran's grin returned, dangerous and proud. "Yes. Let them." The council hall was built of stone and timber, a place where centuries of decisions had carved the fate of the pack. Tonight, its walls throbbed with tension. Torches burned along the perimeter, throwing shadows that writhed like restless spirits. Wolves crowded the benches, murmuring low, their voices thick with fear and anticipation. Elara entered with Mara at her flank. Kieran followed, uninvited yet unstoppable, his golden eyes casting an unspoken challenge to anyone bold enough to object. None did. The air bent around him, and the crowd shifted uneasily, parting as if instinct alone demanded distance. At the center of the hall, the Alpha waited. His muzzle was still scarred from their clash, though he stood tall, cloaked in authority. His eyes burned with resentment, and something sharper. Fear. "Elara," he said, her name rolling off his tongue like a curse. "You bring danger into our midst. You break our altar, unleash a monster, and now you dare stand here as if you are not a threat to us all." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Some nodded, some growled low in their throats. Elara's chest tightened, but she forced her chin up, meeting his gaze. "I never asked for this," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "But it came to me. The curse broke because of me. I won't apologize for surviving what the moon set in motion." "You call this survival?" the Alpha barked. "You call binding yourself to that creature a blessing?" His clawed hand pointed at Kieran, who only smirked, utterly unfazed. "Look at him. His fire will scorch us all. And you carry it in your veins." Kieran tilted his head, voice dripping with amusement. "Strange, how you tremble before the very fire you should kneel to." The Alpha lunged a step forward, but Elara raised her hand sharply. To her shock, the room obeyed her gesture, the murmurs quieted, the tension sharpened into silence. Even the Alpha hesitated. The fire inside her pulsed, not wild this time, but focused. "I am not your enemy," Elara said, her voice low but carrying through the hall. "The curse is broken. You felt it, you know it. Our bonds will not falter again. Wolves will not die unchosen again. My tears ended that. I ended that." Some wolves stirred, whispers softening. A mother near the front clutched her child tighter, her eyes wide with something that looked more like hope than fear. But the Alpha's snarl cut through. "Hope is a lie. The gods sealed that curse for a reason. If it is truly broken, then it is because another curse has taken its place, inside you." Kieran stepped forward, but Elara held up a hand, silencing him too. The fire coiled within her chest like a beast, restless and waiting. She turned her gaze on the Alpha, her words steady. "Then test me. If I am cursed, let it show. If I am blessed, let it burn brighter. But do not mistake me for the girl you ignored. I will not bow. Not to you. Not anymore." The torches flared higher, flames leaping as though answering her vow. Gasps filled the hall, some wolves bowing their heads instinctively. The Alpha's lips curled back, but his eyes betrayed what he could not hide: he had already lost the room. Mara's voice broke the silence, clear and firm. "I follow Elara." Others rose slowly. A young warrior. A mother with her pup. One by one, wolves lifted their hands or lowered their heads, not to the Alpha but to her. The hall shifted, allegiance breaking like a dam. Elara's heart hammered. She hadn't wanted this, but the fire inside her seemed to have always known. The Alpha's growl rolled low and dangerous. "You think you've won them. But this will end in blood. Yours. Theirs. His." His eyes flicked to Kieran. "The moon will see you for what you are, girl. And it will devour you." He stormed from the hall, his loyalists trailing like shadows. Elara's knees nearly gave, the weight of the moment pressing down. But then Kieran's voice slid into her ear, low and almost reverent. "Do you feel it now, Flame? This is only the beginning." The days after the council fractured into something that felt like walking a knife's edge. Half the pack moved around Elara with cautious reverence, as if she were already their Alpha. The others avoided her altogether, slipping away to meet in whispered knots that reeked of dissent. The Alpha had not returned to the village. His absence was not relief, it was threat. Elara rose with the dawn, patrolling the borders with Mara and a few loyal warriors. She trained until her muscles screamed, learning to master the sharpened instincts that surged in her since the curse broke. Her senses had doubled. She could hear the flick of a squirrel's tail in the canopy, smell the shift of the wind before the storm broke. But the fire inside her was less obedient. It flared at will, boiling her blood when her emotions tipped too high, searing her skin when her temper broke. And always, Kieran was there. He moved like a storm at her shoulder, too close, too present. When she faltered, his laughter cut sharp and low, forcing her forward. When her fire nearly consumed her, his hand closed over hers, anchoring her through the burn. He taught her to harness the hunger, to twist it into focus. Yet his nearness carried its own danger. One evening, after hours of sparring, she collapsed against the training post, sweat slicking her hair to her skin. The warriors had long since retreated. Only Kieran remained, leaning lazily against a fallen log, his golden eyes watching her like a predator studying prey. "You're pushing too hard," he drawled. She barked a humorless laugh. "Says the man who hasn't stopped taunting me for being weak." His grin was sharp. Weakness is a word for those who refuse to face their fire. You run headlong into it, even when it scorches you. That is strength, flame. Her chest tightened at the name, his name for her, a word that had begun to feel less like a taunt and more like a truth. She met his gaze, her voice low. "And if the fire consumes me?" He stepped closer, his heat rolling into her space, his hand brushing against her jaw. The touch was light, but it seared. "Then I burn with you." The words unraveled something inside her. She hated how much she wanted them. She hated how much she wanted him. And yet, when his thumb traced the edge of her cheek, she leaned into the touch. For one heartbeat, she forgot the fear, the pack, the looming threat of the Alpha's return. There was only the fire, and the man who carried it with her. But Mara's voice cut through the night, urgent and sharp. "Elara. Scouts just returned. The Alpha is moving. He's gathered every wolf who still follows him. They're marching on us." The moment shattered, leaving Elara's skin burning where Kieran's hand had been. She straightened, her breath ragged, her heart pounding with a new rhythm, part fear, part fury. "How many?" she asked, her voice hardening. Mara's eyes were grim. "Too many." Kieran's grin widened, feral and eager. "Good. Let them come." Elara swallowed the lump in her throat, squaring her shoulders. The fire inside her roared, not with chaos this time but with purpose. She had made her choice. Now she would see it through. The night before battle carried a stillness sharper than any howl. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Elara stood at the edge of the clearing where the altar had shattered, her fingers pressed against the stone. It still glowed faintly, veins of silver running through the cracks like scars that never healed. She thought of her tears, how they had set all of this in motion. The girl she had been that night felt like a ghost, small, trembling, unseen. Now she stood on the brink of war. Behind her, the camp buzzed with restless energy. Warriors sharpened blades, mothers gathered their children close, elders whispered prayers into the smoke of the torches. Fear lay heavy on them all, but beneath it ran something else, an undercurrent of belief. Belief in her. "Elara." Mara's voice was soft but firm as she approached, her hand brushing Elara's arm. "They're ready for you. Ready for her. Not the Alpha. Not the elders. Her." Elara drew a breath that tasted of ash and moonlight, then turned to face the camp. Wolves gathered, eyes reflecting firelight, bodies tense with expectation. She saw both loyalty and doubt among them, but all looked to her. Her voice rose, clear and steady despite the quake in her chest. "The Alpha calls me cursed. Maybe he's right. The fire inside me is dangerous. It hungers, it burns. But it also freed us. The bonds that faltered for generations will not falter again. The chains that bound us in silence are broken. I will not apologize for that, and I will not cower." She lifted her chin, the fire sparking visibly in her golden eyes. "If they come for us tomorrow, let them. We will show them that the Unchosen are never powerless." A ripple of howls answered her, fierce and raw, carrying into the night. When the sound faded, Kieran stepped into the circle of firelight, his presence commanding without a word. His golden gaze swept over the crowd before landing on her, burning with pride. "She speaks true. You fear me, and you should. But tonight, your enemies will fear me more. Stand with her, and you stand with me, and together, we will break more than a curse. We will break those who dare chain us again." A shiver ran through the pack, fear and awe colliding. Elara's pulse quickened at his words, at the way his fire wrapped around her own. For better or worse, they were bound. Later, when the camp settled into uneasy rest, Elara found herself by the river once more. The water's surface rippled with moonlight, her reflection split between human and wolf, between what she had been and what she was becoming. Kieran appeared without sound, the way shadows always seemed to bend toward him. He crouched beside her, his presence steady and heavy. "You carry their hope now," he said softly. "That weight will crush you if you let it." Elara met his gaze, her voice barely more than a whisper. "And if I let the fire carry me instead?" His lips curved, equal parts dangerous and tender. "Then nothing will stand against you." For a moment, the world shrank to the space between them, the heat of his body, the steady pulse of his breath, the invisible thread pulling them closer. She wanted to close that distance, to lose herself in it. But the sound of a distant howl broke the spell, sharp and haunting. The Alpha's call. Tomorrow, the war would begin. Dawn broke with a blood-red sky. The forest, usually alive with birdsong, lay in eerie silence, as though even the earth held its breath for what was coming. Elara stood at the front of her gathered wolves, the cold dew soaking the hem of her boots. Her heart thundered, but her spine was iron. Around her, warriors shifted in anticipation, some fully in their wolf forms, others half-shifted, their claws gleaming, their eyes reflecting the feral light of morning. Mara stood at her side, loyal as the moon itself, jaw tight with resolve. And behind them all, Kieran loomed. He had not shifted, but he didn't need to. His golden fire radiated from him in waves, his presence as commanding as an entire army. He didn't belong to the pack, but he was their shield now, their sword, their storm. A low rumble shivered through the ground before the first howl split the morning. From the far ridge, the Alpha appeared with his loyalists. Their numbers were larger, wolves spilling down the slope like a tide of teeth and fury. Their eyes glowed with bloodlust, their howls echoing like war drums. At their head, the Alpha's scarred muzzle twisted in a snarl, his body bristling with power. Elara, his voice carried across the field, thunderous and venomous. "You stand with a curse at your side, and you dare call yourself leader? I will burn this sickness out of us." Elara's throat tightened, but she stepped forward, her voice rising, clear and steady. "You call me cursed. But it was my fire that ended the bond's decay. It was my tears that shattered what the gods chained. Look at your own fear, Alpha, it is that, not I, that weakens us." Snarls erupted among his wolves. But behind her, Elara heard something else, her wolves howling in answer, a wall of sound that shook the air. They had chosen her. The Alpha's lips curled. "Then they die with you." The battle erupted like lightning. Wolves collided midfield, fur and claws and teeth flashing in a storm of blood and earth. The clash of bodies shook the ground, snarls and screams tearing through the morning air. Elara shifted mid-stride, her body snapping into wolf form, fur bristling with firelight. She hit the first attacker head-on, her claws raking, her jaws closing on a shoulder. The fire inside her surged, spilling into her strike, burning where her teeth met flesh. The wolf yelped and fell back, smoke rising from the wound. Everywhere she turned, chaos raged. Mara fought like a whirlwind, her mate at her side. Elara's wolves held the line, but the Alpha's army pressed hard, their numbers threatening to overwhelm. Then Kieran moved. He was less man than force of nature, his steps cracking the earth, his strike sending wolves flying. Flames shimmered at his fingertips, burning without consuming, his laughter wild and terrible as he tore through the enemy ranks. He was beautiful and horrifying, a weapon unleashed. "Elara." Mara's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with warning. Elara turned just in time to see the Alpha himself charging, his massive wolf form barreling toward her with lethal intent. His eyes glowed red, his teeth bared for her throat. The fire inside her roared, rising to meet the moment. She leapt to meet him, their bodies colliding in midair with bone-cracking force. They tumbled across the ground, snapping and slashing, each strike echoing with years of resentment, rage, and fate. His jaws closed on her shoulder, pain searing white-hot. She howled, the sound shaking the trees, but instead of crumpling, she unleashed the fire. It poured from her wound, searing his muzzle, forcing him to release her with a shriek of pain. "You see," he snarled, blood and smoke dripping from his jaws. "The curse eats you alive." Elara rose, panting, her fur bristling with silver-gold flames. Her voice split the battlefield, clear as steel. "No. It feeds me." And with that, she lunged again, ready to end this fight once and for all. The battlefield had narrowed to a circle of fire and blood. Wolves clashed around them, but Elara and the Alpha were the storm's center, every eye drawn to their duel. The earth itself bore the scars of their struggle, claw marks carved into soil, scorched patches where her fire had spilled. The Alpha prowled in a wide arc, his massive wolf form bleeding from burns and cuts, yet his eyes glowed with savage determination. "You think you can carry what the gods chained? You're a child, Elara. A vessel waiting to break." Her wolf form snarled, lips peeling back from gleaming fangs. Pain seared her shoulder where his bite had torn flesh, but the fire inside her pulsed stronger with every wound, every drop of blood spilled. It wasn't hollowing her, it was filling her. "I was unseen all my life," she growled, her voice carrying through her wolf's maw. "But tonight, I burn." She lunged, faster than she had ever moved, her body guided by something beyond instinct. She struck the Alpha broadside, driving him to the ground. Her claws dug into his throat, fire spilling from her touch, branding his flesh with glowing lines. He bucked and rolled, throwing her off, but she landed on her feet, fire trailing from her fur like a comet. The crowd of wolves parted instinctively, the fight too dangerous to stand near. Their howls had faded into silence, all eyes locked on the two figures clashing beneath the blood-red dawn. The Alpha charged again, but Elara met him head-on. Their bodies collided with a thunderous crack. His jaws snapped toward her throat, but she twisted, sinking her teeth deep into his shoulder. He howled, thrashing, but her fire poured into the wound, searing muscle and bone. Smoke rose from his fur, his body trembling under her grip. "Elara." Mara's voice rang out, raw with desperation. "End it." Her jaws hovered at his throat, her fangs inches from the final strike. She could feel his pulse racing, could taste his fear. With one bite, the war would end. The pack would be hers. And yet, her fire trembled, not demanding death but waiting. It was not hunger but choice. Kieran's voice rumbled across the battlefield, steady, commanding. "Take what is yours, Flame. End him, or spare him. But let it be your will, not his, not mine, not the gods." Her golden eyes locked with the Alpha's. He snarled weakly, his strength waning. "Do it," he spat, blood dripping from his jaws. "Prove you're nothing but the monster I warned them of." Time seemed to still. The entire pack held its breath. Elara pulled back, releasing him. Her fire flared once more, not as a weapon but as a mantle, wrapping her in silver-gold light. She stepped away, her voice ringing across the field. "I am not your monster. I am your Alpha." The Alpha collapsed, too broken to rise again, his body shuddering with pain and shame. Around them, silence reigned, until, slowly, one wolf bowed. Then another. And another. Soon, a wave of wolves bent their heads to her, their howls rising in unison, not of fear but of allegiance. Mara's howl was loudest, fierce with pride. Elara stood tall in the circle of firelight, her chest heaving, her body battered but unbroken. The fire no longer felt like a curse gnawing at her, it pulsed steady, alive, a part of her she could finally claim. Kieran watched from the edge, golden eyes gleaming. His smile was sharp but reverent, the look of a predator seeing not prey but a queen. "You've done it," he murmured, voice almost lost in the rising howls. "Not Unchosen. Never again." The dawn broke fully then, washing the battlefield in light. Elara stood amidst her pack, fire and blood behind her, destiny before her. She was Alpha now. And the fire was hers to wield. When the dust of battle settled, the field lay strewn with the wounded, the dead, and the trembling remnants of fear. Elara's wolves moved swiftly, gathering their fallen, tending wounds, bringing order back to chaos. The Alpha's loyalists, those who lived, crawled away or bent their heads in reluctant surrender. No one challenged her claim again. Elara shifted back into her human form, her body bruised and torn but standing tall. The silver-gold fire lingered faintly in her veins, humming like a heartbeat. It no longer felt wild or ravenous. It felt claimed. Mara approached first, her hands still slick with blood, her eyes fierce and proud. "You did it," she said, her voice breaking with relief. "You are Alpha." The word hit Elara like a weight and a gift all at once. For so long, she had lived in the shadow of others' choices, unseen, unpicked, unworthy. Now, the choice was hers, and the pack had seen it. Kieran strode through the aftermath like a storm come to rest. Wolves flinched at his presence, but he ignored them, his gaze fixed only on her. "You spared him," he said, nodding toward the broken Alpha being dragged away by his remaining followers. "Mercy where there could have been fire. That is why they bow to you now, Flame." Elara's throat tightened. Mercy was the harder choice. A slow smile tugged at his mouth, sharp and reverent. And the stronger one. She turned her eyes on him, the bond between them thrumming like a tether of heat and shadow. "This fire inside me, your curse, my burden, what happens now?" Kieran stepped closer, so near she could feel the heat radiating from him, the storm he carried always just beneath the surface. "It is no longer my curse, Elara. It is ours. Bound not by chains, not by gods, but by choice. If you will it, we will master it together. If you reject it," his golden eyes burned into hers. "Then it burns me alone." Her heart stumbled at the gravity of it. For the first time, the bond between them didn't feel like doom. It felt like possibility. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze steadily. "Then it is ours." His grin widened, feral and triumphant, but softened at the edges when he brushed his fingers against her cheek. The touch sparked, but this time it didn't scorch. It warmed. Behind them, the pack began to howl, not in mourning, not in fear, but in recognition. The sound rose into the dawn, echoing across the forest, fierce and alive. Elara closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. She was no longer unchosen. She was Alpha. She was Flame. She was more than the girl who wept at the altar, she was the woman whose tears had broken the chains of generations. When she opened her eyes again, Kieran was still watching her, his smile edged with fire and devotion alike. And for the first time, she allowed herself to smile back. Epilogue. Seasons passed. The pack healed, rebuilt, and thrived beneath her rule. No wolf went unchosen again, the bonds held strong, the curse no longer gnawing at their roots. Some still whispered of fear, some still doubted, but none denied the strength of the Alpha who bore fire in her blood. At her side, always, was Kieran. Some called him her shadow, others her curse. But Elara knew him as something else. Her equal, her flame, her choice. Together, they walked the line between danger and salvation, their bond forged not by fate but by defiance. On nights when the moon hung full and bright, Elara would stand at the river's edge, the reflection of silver and gold dancing in her eyes. She had been overlooked once, forgotten by the very destiny she had begged for. But no longer. She was Alpha Elara, flame of the unchosen. And her fire would never be silenced again. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe so you never miss a story.